So as all this happens, Lebanon's getting bombed on a daily basis, and those bombings are escalating. Mohsen Rezai, the head of the IRGC, no, the head of the Supreme National Council, Security Council, he said, sooner or later we will send Netanyahu to hell where he belongs. He also talked about the relationship with the Lebanese peoples, historical, deep-rooted, talks about how one of the conditions is for Israel to pull out of Iran, one of the conditions in the MOU, and they would not give up on that condition, and then talks about Gaza as well, that the territories of Lebanon and Gaza must be liberated, free. Israel should pull out of them. And he talked about how Beirut is a red line, and if the red line, since they've given that red line, Israel hasn't crossed it. But there's a threat made to Israel, a threat made to Netanyahu, as Netanyahu continues, or Israel continues to bomb Lebanon, southern Lebanon. And there was a report, I haven't seen much confirmation of it, but I've seen a few sources talk about a strike near Damascus. Not a major strike, because there hasn't been much reporting of it, and I'm assuming not confirmed yet, otherwise it should be flooding the channels. But I think it begs the question, and something I've asked a couple of guests today, is how worried are you that we'll see war resume between Iran and Israel? Because Israel is not giving up on Hezbollah, definitely not giving up on Gaza. I'm in a position I don't think Iran will go to war for Gaza. Some people disagree. I think you may disagree. I think they would go to war for Lebanon. That's strategically very important for them. And Israel, at least before the elections, maybe even after the elections, are not budging on the southern Lebanon. There was a report that came out just before we went live as well, that Israel is saying they don't want to, I should have saved it, they don't want the pilot zone. You know how Lebanon was creating those pilot zones, and the Lebanese military should help disarm Hezbollah in those pilot zones. According to the Israelis, according to Walla News, Israel informed the US that the pilot zone program in southern Lebanon has failed, expressing strong dissatisfaction with the Lebanese army. In other words, kind of laying the ground for more strikes. They're saying, hey, the peace deal with the pilot zones already weeks later is not working. And because Lebanon is not destroying Hezbollah infrastructure, blah, 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 there's no real enforcement. Just kind of, if they do say that publicly, it's kind of setting the stage for escalation.
Yeah, I think at some point Israel's going to get hit again if they keep this up. Now, I think Iran's given another day or two to see if the Pakistani initiative. The Pakistanis are really upbeat. They thought they might be on the threshold of a deal. Giving Donald Trump a face-saving way to walk away. I'm frankly skeptical of that report. I mean, it's a legitimate report. What the Pakistanis are saying, I don't think they're making it up. I'm thinking they're giving their actual reflection of what they believe. I just think that the belief is misplaced. I think they don't understand Trump. Trump really is. He's shown he's in no mood to make any kind of concession. Continues to insist. He put out his mission accomplished meme yesterday. Good God. Because you remember which aircraft carrier would Judge W. Bush was on when he said mission accomplished? Yeah, the USS Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
And that's what Brandon and I had a fun time talking about Abraham Lincoln going to Thailand. Party time.
True. It actually is going to Thailand.
Yeah.
A few of them are going to end up, there's always a joke about Thailand. You go there and you end up with this beautiful woman. You get memes all the time. End up with a beautiful woman. She was so pretty and stuff. And then you find out the next day it was a dude.
It was a dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's what Errol Smith must have had that in mind when they wrote "Dude Looks Like a Lady."
So you've got on that front the report of Iran threatening to strike Israel, not directly threatening to strike Israel, threatening to take Netanyahu to hell where he belongs, and warning that Lebanon's a red line, and I'm guessing they'll be addressing it at a certain time. There's also a report that came in that the US, I think that's by the Wall Street Journal, the US has informed mediators that Trump does not want to return to the MOU. And so Iran is saying they won't negotiate they don't want to negotiate anything until the MOU terms are being fulfilled by the US. And Trump saying he doesn't want to return to the MOU There it is. Wall Street Journal, citing people familiar with the matter, reports that U.S. government has no interest in returning to the original terms of the MOU. Wall Street Journal also reports that Trump is still searching for an outcome in the Iran war that looks like a victory for Trump and the U.S. Meanwhile, there's another report by The Atlantic that Trump just wants the war to disappear from the headlines before the midterms. Otherwise, it's going to hurt him in the midterms. Yeah.
Yeah, and Iran's not backing off. If the United States wants to negotiate, fulfill the MOU. Those are the terms. And Iran's not flinching on that one bit.
Yeah. Also, Trump was asked, Trump on punishing Russia and China if they continue to do business with Iran after the launch of Operation Economic Outcast. The reporter said, will you punish Putin or Russia if they continue to do business with Iran? He goes, well, it depends. It depends. So far, I think Russia's behaved quite well having to do with the Strait of Hormuz. And you have to understand, for everything they do, we do also. You know, somebody was saying about China. What about China? We hear they're spying. We spy on them too. That's the way, I guess. And then he asked, why not sanction Chinese banks, though? He said, who says I'm not? I'm not going to tell you everything I do. You don't know if I'm doing it. I don't have to announce everything. So, and this kind of, what we've seen since Operation D-Day, is what I've expected and what George Gammon told me is yesterday, is that, I haven't told you this because I didn't speak to you yesterday. Operation D-Day is more for show. They know they're not going to be able to implement it. They know it won't work. They know countries won't abide by it. They can't force Chinese companies to abide by it. The US is not in that position. It will be too costly for the US. So in George's view, and I think it's a pretty good view, this is more for Trump to kind of say something so it makes it seem like he hasn't given up on Iran. He can keep saying Iran is suffering. They can't pay their soldiers. There's bread lines, people lining up on the streets. The economy is collapsing. So keep making that argument so you can call it a victory for the voters before the midterms.
Yeah, he's completely out of touch with reality. I mean, so you know Ahmed Suleiman, and you know he was in Iran during the funeral celebrations
Nice.
or commemorations. The problem he had there was he got so much food he was putting on weight because all the Iranians were passing food out to him.
That's nice. He was there for the funeral.
Yeah, other Americans who went there.
I know
as
Max
well.
was there. Yeah. Max told me he went there. Jackson went there. Jackson Hinkle went there. He started shouting down to the USA.
There were no bread lines. You know, in fact, when you go back, as we talked about the last time we spoke, with the purchasing power parity GDP, it's doubled since 2015 almost.
Before the war. After the war, we don't know, obviously, but before the war.
It hasn't gone down because their trade routes with China, Russia, and Pakistan are wide open. And in fact, they sold so much oil here, you know, a month ago. Remember 2 months ago during the MOU, they were shipping oil out right and left because the United States wanted to try to recognize the oil shortage was coming. So, and the price of diesel though continues to soar throughout Asia, around the world, and that's not getting fixed anytime soon. I published a piece at Sonar last night by Carl Miller, who's an energy consultant still working in the Gulf, and he laid it out very, very clearly. You know, all the numbers, and you know, there's a shortage of diesel that's not going to be resolved anytime soon. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah, no, I think the diesel shortage is pretty catastrophic. As you said, there's no solution to it yet. We've got the issues, you know, we've got disruptions across the board, from the Bab el-Mandeb Strait to the Strait of Hormuz, to the Russian refineries, to the Panama Canal. So we're just getting supply lines attacked across the globe. And there's one of my guests was making the argument. He's in the mindset that this is all part of a bigger plan, disrupting energy globally. But on the Iranian economy, I don't know what the purchasing parity is. I don't think they're doing as badly as Trump would portray it and Bessent would portray it, obviously. And I don't think they're doing better than they did during the war. I think they're doing worse than during the war, but definitely not as bad as Trump is doing. I have no way to prove this. That's just my perception, because you have statements. Morandi told me the same thing. Morandi says to me, Mari, the economy is doing badly. People are struggling. But he then makes the point that that doesn't mean we're going to concede in any way. And then you've got the statements, if you remember, the president and Galibaf in one day where they said how the economy is doing really badly and people can't go hungry. It was part of a bigger context, part of a speech. So I think they're doing badly, but I also think that, I did a post, I sent it to my team to post about it. There was the followers of Pahlavi were dropped by like millions during the war. And I think that's an indication of just another one of many indicators that, when you go and bomb the hell out of a country, people would be willing to go through hardship to make sure they don't, bow to the imperialists, and they don't concede in any way. And I think we're seeing that, and I think we'll continue seeing that. I just don't think. Would you agree though that the sanctions are more? Do you think the sanctions they'll genuinely believe it could work, or do you think they're doing it more for political purposes to make it seem like they're doing something?
This all show they're toothless. They're applying sanctions to a financial system that is outside of the control of the United States. Think of it as like the railroad gauge in Western Europe is of a certain width. Those trains run fine over that. Once they cross the border into Ukraine is still using a Soviet gauge. It's wider. The trains don't run on that. So the trains that run in Ukraine and Russia are designed for that rail system. So think of these financial systems of SWIFT is one set of railroad lines, and CIPS as another one. It is completely separate. It's how you manage financial transactions, and the 2%, like we talked about, the 2% number is looking at total transactions. Well, SWIFT captures a lot of small dollar. Like when I would pay a consultant in Europe, I'd send it wire transfer via SWIFT. But what China's doing is these are major transactions. They may have fewer, but the actual transactions themselves are far larger. And they've been basically almost doubling every year. And the number of countries is increasing as well. I saw one figure of 180. I think that may be high, but at least 100 countries is for sure. And what are they doing? They're trading in yuan. They're not trading in dollars. And this isn't just about currency swaps. This is about the actual financial infrastructure that's handling it is completely outside the control of the United States. So, Bessent can indulge his fantasy, but it's not. It's going to be of minimal effect. And again, I come back. If Iran was so decisively defeated, if their economy was really this bad, why does the United States need to impose new sanctions? I mean, if they're really defeated, why do you need new sanctions? They're defeated. But that's the point. They're not defeated.
Yeah, obviously.
And Trump keeps spreading this lie, and the Western media keeps reporting it. Saying, "Oh, okay."
No, obviously I agree on the Iran is not defeated. There's not much to disagree with there. And also agree on the sanctions being toothless for different reasons. So first, the CIPS is not 2%. I got the numbers wrong. It's, I think, 0.3 or 0.7%. But you're saying it's not. These are not total dollar amounts. This is total transactions, and you're saying the transactions on the CIPS is larger. Now, I agree with your the sanctions are toothless. I'm not sure whether they're more for show or they genuinely believe they will work, or somewhere in the middle. But I think they're toothless because the companies that would do business with Iran, and even if they do it in yuan, would be targeted with the sanctions because those same businesses would be part of the American financial system. So the sanctions would target them. I just don't think the US. First, I don't think China would abide by the sanctions, and I don't think the US can enforce it. Or if they enforce it, it will come at a massive cost that they can't afford at the moment, especially with all the other issues they're facing with the treasury yields, with the national debt, with the yen intervention as well. So they've got enough issues on their plate to deal with something else. You're talking about the oil shortages. There's a report by Bloomberg that is about 6 to 8 million barrels of crude oil estimated to be moving through the Strait of Hormuz. I think this is through. Yeah, so this is despite the threats and stuff. So I know there was an Access report saying it's like 10 to 15 million barrels a day, if you remember, 10 to 14. That I know you laughed at. So Bloomberg is saying it's 6 to 8 million barrels going through a day. And some countries, Qatar and Kuwait, have recovered shipments to around 70% of their pre-war levels, pre-conflict levels. So the report is saying that the Gulf countries are shipping a lot more oil. Qatar and Kuwait, which suffered the most, are shipping about 70% of the pre-war levels, and there's about 6 to 8 million barrels of crude going out through the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, just nonsense. It's just nonsense. It's Western spin, Western propaganda, But we do have Iran still sending oil out. Iraq is sending oil out with the permission of Iran. So, those 6 million barrels, probably 4 million barrels of it are actually Iran and Iraq, if that's the actual number. Look, the West is in denial after denial after denial.
So another topic that's interesting is Pezeshkian calling on Muslim nations to unite despite their differences. That's according to Al Jazeera. And on another report here by Iranian media, apparently the Iranian government, so it's three reports. I'll give you three separate stories, completely unrelated, but I'll just mention them, all three of them. Pezeshkian calling on Muslim nations to unite despite their differences. And I think it's an important indicator linking to the Mecca agreement where, trying to improve relations with the Gulf after bombing the Gulf and trying to create some sort of alliance to fill the gap left by the US leaving, and also as deterrence against Israel. And that's also Iran establishing itself as one of the major players in the region. So that's story number one. Story number two, which is interesting, the Iranian government has sent inspectors to various gas stations to warn people about queues. So there's videos of people queuing up to collect fuel. There's fuel shortages in Iran. And apparently they're telling people not to queue up. I don't know whether this is for optics or there's other reasons they don't want people to queue up. So that's story number two. And then story number three is Iran has reportedly restored 40% of the damaged capacity at South Pars, at the gas field. Iran's gas field was attacked by Israel. Iran retaliated by striking Qatar's. They've already restored 40% of it, but the rest of the 60% will, according to the Iran's deputy oil minister, will take at least 2 years to restore all of it. So we've got three stories here, all unrelated, but the main one I'd love to get your thoughts on is Iran calling for Islamic nations to form an alliance. I know you talked about Iran getting an offer to join the Mecca alliance. Do you think that could happen in the near term? Too early?
Yeah.
And what do you make of the region?
Yeah, no, I think that could happen. So that, Pezeshkian is, he had the extensive discussion the other day with Asim Munir, and that was one of the messages Munir was carrying. Now, we'll see. So in the next 24 hours, we'll know if the Pakistani beliefs, Pakistan was predicting that they'd be able to announce some breakthrough in negotiations by Friday. I'm skeptical. But that's what the Pakistanis are saying. So we'll see if their optimism was misplaced or not.
Well, the Pakistanis are also really projecting power, even though they've got their own financial troubles. Kuwait and Pakistan signed a joint defense and military cooperation agreement to strengthen their military relationship and operational coordination. Pakistan will assist in training Kuwait's armed forces, improving border management and enhancing military coordination, preparedness and readiness. And a lot of people are saying this is kind of prerequisite before signing a defense agreement similar to the one with Saudi. as they look at doing it with other Gulf countries. Meanwhile, that's an interesting one. According to Middle East Eye, the UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed sent a handwritten letter directly to Saudi's King Salman, bypassing MBS, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, in what many regional powers have seen as a deliberate power move. As unconfirmed, as pretty, because there's a lot of tension, reported tension between the Saudi and the UAE. A Western official commented that the Emirates believes that bypassing the Crown Prince was the only option. Quote, the Emirates felt they had no other option. They had to go straight to the top. MBS is not going to be happy with this approach. Not sure why. I don't know what the major disagreement is between Saudi and the UAE. There's something going on there behind the scenes. Because it just doesn't make sense. Those countries should be getting closer together, especially after this war and after the Israeli strike in Qatar last year.
Well, maybe one of the concerns is the UAE being in the back pocket of Israel.
I don't know if that will continue, though, because it's been relatively quiet on that front. Even Iran hasn't spoken about it. So I don't know whether the agreement with Iran that led Iran not to strike the UAE after Project Freedom involved not only money being flown to Iran, reportedly, but also maybe Iran and the UAE agreeing on what type of presence, what type of relationship the UAE would have with Israel. I have a feeling there might have been some agreement just because the rhetoric on that front eased up. I'm speaking to Professor Izadi tomorrow from Iran and Professor Morandi the day after. I'll actually ask him about this because beforehand, I remember confronting Professor Izadi about this. Beforehand, they were shooting the Emirati flag on national TV with a rifle. The presenter was shooting the Emirati flag, and I confronted Izadi. I'm like, you can't have peace in the region once the war ends by doing things like this. I was actually, critical about it. But it's been very quiet since. So maybe that's part of the deal as well.
Right. Well, until the strait is open, and it's not just an oil shortage; it's a shortage of liquid natural gas too. If Iran's only producing 40%, and I think Qatar's was the majority of their output was destroyed.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's again another shortage for the world. Because remember, 25% of the world's supply of LNG came out of Persian Gulf.
Yeah. I want to see what I thought Qatar repaired. What percentage of Qatar's gas production is still offline compared to pre-war? I can't remember because I did cover it a while ago. So meanwhile, there's the big story now. When I get an answer, I'll let you know. Saudi, according to the New York Times, is preparing for a renewed war with the Houthis. Not to win the war, but not because they think they could defeat the Houthis, but because they want to cause enough damage to the Houthis to then get a better deal during the ongoing negotiations. Do you think we will see a resumption of the war between the Saudis and the Houthis?
Yeah, probably. And the Saudis will be hurt more than the Houthis because there's simply more to hurt.
Yeah. And by the way, Qatar is 20%, 17% is structurally offline. But then, despite that, they still can't export much gas because of the blocked Strait of Hormuz. How much gas they're exporting, depending who you want to listen to, we have no idea.
Right.
Meanwhile, maybe we can wrap it up with this, Larry, is Al-Shara. I've been, I don't want to say I've been advocating for Al-Shara, but I've been saying let's give him a chance for a few months now, longer, for even a year and a half, or whenever, not since he took power, but for about 6-8 months, I've been saying let's give Al-Shara a chance. And so he's the Kurdish group, the SK, I forgot what they're called. They've now officially merged into the Syrian military. A lot of people thought there'll be a bloodbath, etc. That happened. He also, the Kurdish language, I think, is now it's compulsory in school. They just announced it today. And he's speaking about a big vision for the country, described Syria as an economic hub linking the East and the West through trade, logistics, and regional investment. The article talks about how the corridor vision is already taking place. Turkey, Jordan, and Syria are advancing a north-south rail and logistics route toward the Gulf while border upgrades move ahead. DP World is upgrading Tartus port and Saudi and Qatari monies flowing into power, airports, and logistics. And then the comment says, the real test is whether these projects deliver recovery or remain mostly on paper. So he's someone who's got I wouldn't even say shady a past, I'd say a pretty disgusting and troubling past. But he's, he's bringing Syria together. There's still the Druze that Israel's making it very difficult for him to kind of bring those into the Syrian military. He's on the world stage. He's gotten the sanctions lifted by the US. He used a credit card for the first time in 15 years. He used it on TV in the country because he couldn't use American credit cards before because of the sanctions.
Well, which bank issued the credit card? Any idea?
No, I didn't check, Larry.
Was a Visa or MasterCard? I guess they didn't do their due diligence in checking, because a guy with a terrorist past probably shouldn't get a credit card.
Good point. That's a nice jab. Well played. Ahmad al-Shara, while being followed. Well, I can show you the video. Why not, since we're wrapping up? Can you play this video? Let me send it to Paul. There it is. He's in a cafe with Central Bank Governor Mohammed bin Safwat. Ruslan made the first payment via Visa. Larry, Visa. We boycott Visa. Following the removal of sanctions in Syria being reinstated into the global economy.
This goes to show Visa doesn't care who their customers are. Okay, so you've been cutting heads off of people. No big deal. We'll give you the gold card.
But look, if I'm the representative of Visa, I'll just say our own president is shaking the guy's hand and gifting him. So what do you expect from us? He's the president. That our own president is hugging and kissing.
Yeah.
This is it. And as we wrap up, Israel bombardment of Daufat to Kfar Roman in Lebanon, as well as Tulin. Says non-stop bombardment of Lebanon. And Trump posted, as we're wrapping up, Iran is a failing nation. President Donald J. Trump. Great way to end the show. Oh, another one. Jonathan Hunt of Fox News, just now, 50 seconds ago, did a particularly inaccurate report on the failing Islamic Republic of Iran. I don't want to meet. They do. In fact, they are begging to make a deal. Brett Baer should straighten out his flunkies for a change. Thank you for your time, Larry.
Hey, John, Donald Trump just can't stand the truth.